sex.
Surprise.
Surprise.
I knew it had to be in there somewhere.
A lot of men don't really invest in understanding how to actually please a woman. If you think like a man, I can just get turned on very quickly or very visually turned on, right? Where it's like a woman's engine takes longer to rev up. You might think, well, as things progress, harder and faster is better.
Women want things consistent because if you do something right, that gets her pretty far up the scale. She's gonna be like, keep doing that. You can't just take your experience, man or woman, and then apply it. It's a two-person thing. It's not a one-person thing.
Beyond the perfect we discover through our flaws, we complete each other. Better than perfect we stay. Through every fault we find our way.
All right, welcome back to the Better Than Perfect podcast, where every week we share with you how two imperfect people helping each other grow equals one better than perfect relationship. Grow.
Hey, you got it. You got it. It still counts. As you guys can tell, it's John's birthday. Granted, by the time this comes out, it won't be his birthday anymore, but
I'll still be celebrating.
That's right.
We'll be celebrating in the Maldives.
That's right. But yeah, so June 21st, John's birthday. How's your birthday been so far?
It's been wonderful because I get to spend it with you. So.
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah, we haven't even gone to the evening festivities yet, but I think you will enjoy this.
I'm sure I will.
I didn't even mean it that way, but so since it's your birthday, I wanted you to be able to pick the topic that we talked about today. And I know I kind of sprung that on you this morning because you were like, what's the topic? I was like, well, I was going to spring it on you when we were sitting right here and you had no idea, but that felt a little too spur of the moment. So I at least told you this morning that you could pick the topic.
And just this morning, I was thinking, at least I don't have to pick a topic for today.
Well,
they're like, I got you a birthday present, but I got a good one. But before we jump into the topic, what do we have for what's been going on in the
mama's boys are upset.
The mama's boys are upset, yeah.
Well, and the passport bros still think that that one clip is like,
oh, they think that I'm pro passport.
Yeah, they think that you're saying the things that you were reading in that comment because they're like, yeah, this is the truth. And I'm like, they're not watching anything but this clip. So,
well, that's okay. They can think it, So,
but yeah, the mama's boys were really upset. That surprised
me. Yeah, I wouldn't think that people would agree with that you should be a mama's boy. Like,
look, I think they get confused because a man should care about his mother.
Of course, yeah.
But if she does everything for him to the point he can't do a lot of things on his own, or he's looking for a woman specifically to do certain things because he just doesn't want to do them or whatever, that's different than wanting a traditional marriage where, the woman is probably going to take over some of those duties that your mother did when you were a kid, but it's not, they don't understand that it's not the same thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the men who like really don't want to handle any of those things, including like finances and things like that. And they do sort of turn the woman that they're with into a mother figure rather than the wife figure.
And I believe many women in the comments said nobody wants to have sex with someone they have to take care of.
So, very true.
That's
then the guys too, they were like, well, what about daddy's girls? And they don't know anything and they want somebody to pay for all their stuff, which to their point, I don't think a parent should overly do things for their children anyway, because as a parent, you're supposed to be setting your child up for success when they're out on their own and to be independent and things like that. But at the same time, too, they're the same guys that talk about they want a traditional relationship, but then they are complaining about having to provide their part of that.
Yeah. And look, a princess. You do want a princess, okay? You do want to marry a princess. You do want you don't want a woman with daddy issues, do you? Is that what you want for a wife? Is a woman with daddy issues? Is that so? If a woman is a daddy's girl, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right?
What do men even mean by daddy's issues? Like she's insecure and looks for attention in the wrong way?
Yeah, that's what I mean. A woman with daddy issues is because she didn't get the affection from her father, and so she seeks male affection for her esteem, right? Whereas a father, a good father figure that takes care of a daughter and treats her like a princess or treats her right, like the lady that the man that eventually marries her should treat her like, he instills in her self-esteem and confidence
and worth.
And so she doesn't have to seek her self-esteem or confidence elsewhere. She doesn't become a pole dancer.
I wonder where you got that one from.
But yeah, so that's the kind of woman that you do want as a man. You know what I mean? That you it can be to an extreme where she's too princessy and she thinks that the world should be served to her on a platter
around her.
Yeah, and that could be an issue, but you want it to be more on that side of it than the other side of it, for sure. So
I've just come to the conclusion that men love to complain and they try to act like women do. And I'm not saying that women don't, like plenty of women do too, but as we've come to learn that you say one thing, they complain about the opposite, and then you'll be like, they can't complain about this, and then they find some new ways to do that.
As you'll notice now, right, because there's been enough time and you've seen it's the same guys.
Yeah, I do notice
so these guys ruin it for everyone. You know what I mean? Because they make it seem like, because they're so active and so vocal, they make it seem like it's all guys, just like some women ruin it for all women. But yeah, it's and that's the weird thing about social media too, is it's like 100,000 people see your thing, and 20, 30 angry guys comment on it, and you're like, oh, this is what the perception is, but that's not entirely true, but it does show you that there are definitely people that are silent and think the same thing too. So there is that. But yeah, the daddies or the mama's boy thing just surprised the heck out of me.
I was surprised.
And what a lot of men need to read is a book called Iron John by Robert Bly. And so that's actually a really good book about a man's journey through, it's allegorical. So it's a man's journey in becoming a man, essentially in breaking away from his father and his mother, right? Because men generally, boys, their mother takes care of them. They have this sort of bond with their mother, and they have to sever that bond. And in the same way, they have to overthrow their father's rule over them. So that's what it is to be a man. And most men just aren't growing up today, and that's what the problem is. And that's why, being a mama's boy is, it just means you have not matured. You haven't passed that stage. And so many guys grow into adulthood, and they're calling their mom every day. They're asking their mom to help them with it. It's like, you can't do that. You have to, and your wife, we've talked about this before on the podcast about, your wife has to come first.
Yeah. And I was going to say the real issue with a lot of the severe mama's boys, like I was talking about on that clip in that episode, is that typically those mothers push away their sons' partners because they're so involved in their son's life that it's almost like that borderline kind of weird, romantic, but not obviously, but there's plenty of people that I've heard about mother-in-laws that are hate their sons' wives or girlfriends and try to ruin their relationship because the mother wants the son all to herself and all of those things. And that's typically what that severe mama's boy relationship, that's what the mother side usually looks like. She's so obsessed with her son, and then he's so obsessed with her because she's been taking care of him and doing all these things for him, and she can't, ever let her down or anything like that. So it's just typically this extreme version. I'm not talking about men who, because there was quite a few guys that were like, no, my mom taught me how to treat women well and, you know, do things for myself. And I'm like, I'm
not a
not
mama's
talking
boy. Yeah, that's
about
not-
like,
yeah.
I'm not saying a mama's boy that cares about his mother.
No.
Like every man should care about his
Right.
mother. I'm talking about the ones that literally couldn't survive without their mother.
Right.
And well into adulthood still do things like that.
Right.
And then when they get into relationship, then the mother tries to intervene because they've had such this tight connection the whole time.
Right.
That's the sort of relationship that I was talking about. But a lot of men also took it the wrong way with, you know, oh, well, no, I learned how to actually treat women better. And I'm like, yeah, if you care about your mother, you will treat women better because you have a good connection with your mom. But if she does everything for you and basically essentially turns you into a super lazy, has no motivation and no pride and sort of man,
Right.
then it's not helping you. She's not helping you.
Yeah,
She's actually hurting you.
And you'll see this a lot in sort of old country, Middle Eastern cultures, right? Even where, you know, my origins in Turkey, right? Where the women will treat the men, the boys, like so much better than the girls. Mm-hmm. And they'll, you know, just pump up their ego and make them like their little precious boy, right? And it's like, it's so destructive because now you've created this man child, right? Where he expects women to just serve him and he's not capable of doing the things on his own. Right. And so it's
and
like,
he doesn't have to do anything except be a man to be served, right? Because in those cultures too, it's about being born a male.
Right.
It's not even like you have to do anything. It's just because you're a boy. So it's like he also doesn't typically want to better himself or be a better man because he's already getting the praise for it.
Right.
So
Exactly.
he doesn't have to work for anything.
Yeah. And then you have the problem of these guys also, it almost becomes like a matriarchy where they're still asking their mom for everything, advice on everything. She's running their lives. You know, they run everything by their mom and it's no good. And again, a lot of it comes down to if you just look at the marriage ceremony and how it works and what the differences are. When someone gets married, when a man gets married and a woman gets married, the father gives away the daughter to the groom, right? And there's a reason for that is because the man has already left his family, right? And he has become independent on his own. The woman, in many times, is still considered to be part of the family that she grew up in because the father's job is to take care of the woman until she becomes married, right? Traditionally. Mm-hmm. And then he gives her away. He's now entrusting his daughter to this man, right?
To take care of her in the same way. Yeah.
And that's why it is more acceptable for a woman to be a daddy's girl or whatever versus a man being a mama's boy, because that's not how it's supposed to be. So yeah. Which, you know, we can talk about actually the topic that I picked today, which is how men can fix their relationships, what men can do. And this is sort of, you know, if a man is unhappy in his relationship, he thinks maybe his wife or long-term partner is nagging him all the time. She doesn't respect him. She doesn't seem to be interested in sex, doesn't seem to be attracted to him anymore, right? And she just despises him, basically, right? Or they fight all the time. Like he's not happy in their relationship. I'm going to walk through a 5-step process that I use for coaching guys that I think will help a guy to be able to repair to get what he wants, right? To get the kind of woman that he wants. And all these guys that are usually complaining in the comments are complaining about women and they don't understand that there is a way to get a woman to act feminine, to respect you as a man, to have a high desire for you, to appreciate you, as opposed to what they're getting. They're getting something that is a result of how they're acting. So
yeah. Okay. Well, before you start, because I know it's going to go there, I think you should first talk a little bit about, before you jump into that, why men should fix their relationships. Because you know they're going to be like, why do I have to fix it? Why do I have to do this?
I mean, we did an episode, in all fairness, on The Surrendered Wife, which is a book that a woman should read, every woman should read in a relationship, that where she can do some work to fix the relationship.
Right.
But my belief is that the man is supposed to be the leader. So he's supposed to lead by example. So he's supposed to be the one that's, it doesn't matter what she's doing. You're the one who's supposed to be showing her what she should be doing, and doing it by example, by you starting to do the right things.
Right.
And it usually only takes one person doing the right thing in a relationship to actually fix the relationship. Right?
Well, and it makes sense that the man would do it if he wants to be the leader and the authority, because exactly like you said,
right.
If you're claiming to be the leader and you want to take charge and you want to make the decisions,
right.
But the second you get upset or you do something or something happens and you do the wrong thing, that undermines you. You're undermining yourself.
Right.
Even if it's hard, I understand when people's emotions are hurt or involved and things like that, that it's hard sometimes to still do the right thing that you think you should do. But I think it's important that men need to know that you are the one to fix it because you want to lead and you want to be the authority. And that includes doing hard things in a moment where you might not want to step up and be the bigger person.
Yeah.
But you have to if you're going to be a leader, because if you're following the lead of somebody and they're like, okay, well, don't get too emotional and don't call me names. But when they get emotional and they start calling you names, how can you trust that person, right? They're telling you don't do this, but they're not doing it. And so I think men need to realize that they have to fix it because that's what the leader would do. That's what the authority would do.
Right.
And they say that they want a traditional relationship, but I don't think they fully understand that you have to be that man.
Yeah.
You do. And that's what you're, it's easy for you to understand.
Right.
But I think that's why when they hear men have to fix it, they're like, well, why do I? But it's if you want to be the leader and you want to be the authority and you want your woman to look up to you, you have to be worth looking up to and a good leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to do even more than what you're asking, right? So I've been in many instances where I've been in some kind of position either at work or even just leading a group of men, and they don't want to do the thing, or they complain about the work, and so what I've had to do is step up and do whatever it is and do it 10 times better and 10 times more. And so, okay, if I'm doing it, then you can, and that's, there was an instance when I was doing software development, and, it's a little technical jargon, but these guys didn't want to write unit tests for the test, which is a little, a way of testing the code before it's, think of it as making sure that it works, quality control, right? And they're like, oh, we don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. The requirements are too hard. And so I was the basically manager, the architect mentor guy. And I just got into the code and I started doing the work and I started making unit tests and I was getting the work done 10 times as fast as they were, because they were saying it will slow us down too much. I was like, well, I was getting it done faster than they were doing it, plus doing the unit test. And then guess what happened? I didn't even say anything. I just did and started checking in the code. All of a sudden, these guys just start making unit tests and start doing the thing because they don't want to be, because now they have an example. Now it's okay, someone's doing it, right?
Yeah.
And doing it 10 times better. So.
Right. And do men expect a woman to show them the example? Like you said, with the surrendered wife thing, I'm not saying that women don't have things to work on and that they should be working on. But at the end of the day, you could be a very healed woman and handle things very properly, but that's not going to fix these men. And I think a lot of these men think that, well, if women are just completely fixed, then it won't be a problem. And they're really lacking the self-awareness and the growth that they need to go through. And again, the pride, like you said, and the pride in being the authority in their relationship. It goes back to, just pride in general that they're lacking, but really in the relationship, if you're instead well, why do I have to fix this relationship? You're lacking pride in your choice in a woman.
Right.
And just like I said to the women who don't respect the men that they're with, you married this person as a man. Like you're not off the hook. Like you can't just be like, oh, well, I didn't know she was like this. No, that's not how it is, because the person you married is still down in there. Just like I would tell women, oh, well, he wasn't disrespect, or I respected him then, but now he's done all this stuff. No, there's still a man you respect in there.
Right.
You can't just blame it on the other person, but they don't want to take the accountability. And especially if you're the leader and you want a traditional relationship and you're the man in the relationship, you have to be taking accountability and responsibility.
Yeah, the buck has to stop here. That's what it has to be. You have to choose to take it up. So again, and it's not a bad thing in the sense that it's empowering.
Right.
You know, the message is that as a man, you have the power to
and the influence.
Right. And so it's not a negative. Everyone always thinks, oh, you're beating up on men again. It's like you're blaming men for all things. No, I'm trying to inspire and give you the power that you have.
Right.
Which, there might be some hard stuff you have to do in order to gain access to that power, but you can gain access to that power. And that's a good
hard
thing.
Stuff's normally worth the outcome.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. So okay, so let's jump into the 5 steps, essentially. There's a 6th one, which is, at the end, but the first step is this, right? Which is understanding masculinity and femininity, right? This is the base. Right? And the reason why this is so important is because I believe that 90% of the problems in relationships come from men thinking that women must think like they do, and women thinking that men must think like they do, right? That's the biggest problem. And no one really tells you different. I mean, you hear the jokes and stuff like, this is a woman and it's got all these knobs and dials, and it's like, this is a man. And it's got like one button. So you hear that kind of stuff, or you hear women are emotional and men are logical, but most people don't really understand masculinity and femininity, right? They still tend to think, oh, if this is something that I like, or this would make me feel good, then the other person would be. It's the same thing kind of with the 5 love languages, right? A lot of people are like, oh, well, everybody likes the same thing I do. Not true, right? That, people have different love languages, but men and women, the masculine and the feminine, is completely different set of desires, completely different way of operating, way of communicating what's important to them, what's meaningful, all those things. We can get into the, obviously the logic and the emotion and all that stuff too, but it's just, a man has to first start by studying this, by understanding what does it actually mean to be masculine? Right. What does it actually mean to be feminine? What are the differences? And then also, what are the differences in the communication, right? So for instance, one that I think we've talked about a lot, which that video of it's not the nail that I like to play with, is that in communication, right? The primary thing that women are usually looking for is validation of their emotions. She just wants to know that the man understands how she feels and cares about how she feels. Whereas the man's primary thing in communication is wanting to solve a problem, or to be understood, or to explain the thing, right? That's, those are so different. And so that's why so many men end up messing up in communication, because they're just trying to explain why they did what they did. And that's not what a woman wants. And it creates her, and women make a similar mistake when they're communicating with a man, not understanding what he wants out of that communication. So, but understanding that is the first step.
Sure.
You got what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that is important. We've talked on our own about, realizing how different things are. Like women, they enjoy the romantic things that involve like more acts of service, or like planning, flowers or certain things like that. And so women might think, oh, well, he likes his candy bar, so I'm going to bring it to him. And that's a nice thing.
Right.
And they start kind of doing similar things that their husband would do for them, but they don't realize that, yes, that's nice and your husband appreciates it, but it's not what makes him feel romanced or as loved as what we talked about in the episode about how women can be romantic, which is typically more like intimacy, like physical intimacy and just intimacy in general is what men want. And it is a more simple thing.
Yeah.
And I think women, as far as the romance, they want things a little bit more complex. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because I think that a woman does want to feel loved in different ways so that she does feel like you fully love her. Whereas like a man just wants that physical intimacy. Like most men's love language is physical touch. Not all of them, but most of them, because that is the way that they connect more deeply with the woman that they're with. So I think, and then again, men are just like, we watched a clip from the Breakup movie.
Oh yeah, that was good.
That I'm sure people have seen before with what's his name? Jennifer Aniston and what's his name? Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn. And he's like, she's like, I needed you to bring 12 lemons home. And he's like, I brought 3. And she's like, yeah, that's not 12. And then he's like, well, I helped you out. I did something you liked this morning. And she's like, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So he's operating from the place that a man would like that. Like that would have made a man's day for the whole day. And he would have been like, yeah, that's great. But that's not like, not that women don't enjoy that, but that's not going to fix all the problems. That's not going to make her feel more connected to you. Like it will, but not in the way that it does for men.
No.
So men are viewing it from that lens. Women are viewing it from their lens rather than, you know, trying to see the other person's side. And like you said, that's just one of the ways that we're very different. The communication sort of thing is also a very big difference. I'm not saying that women don't ever want their problems to be solved or the man that they're with to help them solve their problems. But a lot of the time, I think the issue is that a woman doesn't feel heard at all because the man's just focusing on solving the problems. And a lot of times it's more about the problem than about her.
Right.
And so that's where that she just wants you to listen, because at that point she knows that you care about her if you're just listening. But if you're listening to her and all you care about is solving her problem, so she'll shut up, that's how women feel if you're just trying to solve the problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
even if you're solving the problem to help her, it feels that way.
Right. Exactly.
And that, I mean, that's something that came up in the comments too of our videos, is the idea of how men and women experience intimacy differently, right? Because there was a lot of men that are like, physical intimacy is intimacy. It's emotional connection for men, right? And women are like, that's not emotional connection for you. I mean, it's partial, but it's like women's emotional connection is different. And so a lot of women don't understand that physical intimacy equals emotional connection for a man. That's how he feels. Like it's the same thing as if you're being ignored, you know, but
emotionally.
Right. Yeah. But again, men have to understand that, the way that you feel about physical intimacy and feeling a connection and feeling emotional connection is exactly how women feel about romance.
Right.
And that, and so if you understand that as a man, then you're like, oh, wow. So I can do the equivalent of what I want from her, but you don't do the exact same. And that's what I was talking about. It's like, if you're thinking, if you don't understand the difference between masculine and femininity, as a guy, you're like, well, I'm going to give her a lot of physical intimacy. Then she'll know I really love her. Yeah. And it's not going to work. Right. Right.
Exactly. So. Yeah. I think if both men and women take the time to actually learn what the other person wants rather than what they think that they want, then they'll understand their partner better and they'll have a better connection.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So the second step. So once a man understands masculine and femininity, now it's time to start becoming masculine.
Okay.
So this is the process, right? Because before you're even trying to change anything in the relationship, you have to understand it, first of all. And then you have to start embodying that on your own, not even trying to apply to the relationship at this point. This looks like a man working on leadership skills, his communication skills, being more stoic, emotional mastery, right? Because if you're going to execute this in the relationship, you can't be flying off the handle. You can't be getting upset. You have to have a very, very long fuse and be calm. Because if you understand masculinity, I think the best example that I ever heard is it's like the man, masculinity is like the tree in a hurricane. And femininity is like the hurricane, because when women's emotions are all over the place, that tree needs to be able to withstand those hurricane winds. And so that's what a man has to be able to do. That's being masculine, is to not be blown all over the place, no matter what the weather is of the feminine woman that he's with. And then she can trust him because he's stable, right? He's not going anywhere. So that is the next thing, is to understand and to start applying these things, right? So now you understand what it is to be masculine. How do you do these things, right? And so this also involves taking over finances, right? Man should be...
They're going to be upset about that.
He should be... And he shouldn't... There's so many men, right? And I did this at one point in my previous relationship, where you give the woman the checkbook and she pays all the bills and does all that stuff. You're working your job, but you're like, she'll take care of the bills and all of these things, because that's how it operates for a lot of relationships, honestly, right? Because she's the dependable one. She's going to make sure they're done on time. And you don't want to do that as a man. You need to step up and take responsibility for the finances and the providing, and and making sure that everything is taken care of. Because
and you should be dependable.
Right.
Like, I mean, you just saying that, I'm like, guys do say that. They're like, she's dependable, get done on time.
Right.
Do they never be like thinking, I should probably be dependable and be on time? Like, that's, especially if you want a traditional relationship, like that's what the leader does.
Have you ever in our time together ever worried that a bill wasn't going to be paid on time, or that some trip that, or thing that needed to be booked wasn't going to get booked, or some whatever it wasn't going to get done?
No,
because
you're very dependable,
right? Because I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get it done, right? So, and that creates a space in your head that you don't have to occupy with all those thoughts,
right?
And you can occupy with the kind of thoughts that a man would like them to be occupied. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's what a lot of these guys don't understand, and that's why also you're getting nagged, right? Because you're proving to not
she's
be
stressed
dependable.
out because, like, she's going to do it on time and she's going to be dependable, but that can be stressful, especially if she's paying all the bills and probably working too, because a lot of these guys want to do 50-50. That's a lot of stress on her. And I'm not saying that it means that she can act however she wants, but that's going to cause her to not be as pleasant and stress-free and be more emotional and things like that men supposedly don't want women to be. They don't realize that when you take over the authority, especially like with the finances and things like that, you give her a freedom to not be as stressed out, to be more feminine, to be more caring and nurturing and all the things that you want her to be, because you're taking that off of her shoulders.
Right. And I think going back to kind of the first step to again, the difference is that men's mind can compartmentalize things. So I have a hard day at work, something's going on with this, or this person's pissing me off, whatever. They're all going into little different compartments, and I can just show up here and operate and be fine. It's not, because these things are in their compartments. Women really don't compartmentalize things mentally. It's all in one place. And so the bills are in the same exact place as everything else. And so that's why.
Well, when you operate from a more emotional, vulnerable place, it's harder to do that, because you are still caring about this other thing over here, because you're just more sensitive to that sort of thing. So it does get jumbled up. You are right. But and it's also because men, like you said, they're more logical. They can, kind of not let that bother them while they're focusing on this. But when you're a woman and you're more emotional and you have that more like nurturing, caring part of you, you're going to care about something for longer than a man would. He'd be like, okay, well, I'll deal with that later. Whereas a woman can't necessarily put that off because it's still bothering her. And so that makes a lot of sense.
And this is the stage where you start learning to take pride as a man, as being a man, right? Where you learn.
Yeah, learning to be masculine and doing things differently.
Because you have to think, all right, a magic phrase is, here, baby, let me take care of that for you. Right? Don't stress yourself out. Let me take care of that for you. That's a magic phrase, because that's what you should be thinking as a man if you're being in your masculine, right? And for a lot of guys too, they might need also at this stage to do things like go to the gym and do masculine things and hang out with other men. It depends on where you are, because a lot of guys might even be masculine, but they're not masculine in relationship, which we'll talk about next, because that's actually the next step. But yeah, this is critical. Is once you understand the difference, then you have to start stepping up and actually now embodying these traits, which takes some time. It takes some work to figure these things out.
That's true.
So then that brings us to the third step, which is being masculine, bringing this masculinity into the relationship, right? So now that you understand the differences and you understand, and you're working on yourself to be more masculine, now you have to show up as masculine in the relationship. So this means now that you're putting this stuff into practice, especially communication, right? So now you're practicing, hopefully you have learned how to be more stoic. And now when you're communicating, you're focusing on validating emotions, right? You are understanding the different communication style that a woman has, so that you can start doing the right thing now. Because most of the guys that are in the situation where the woman is nagging them, she's not attracted to them, she doesn't want to have sex with them, a lot of that comes from the way that he's treating her, and he doesn't understand it, because almost all the time I hear guys say, she's just so ungrateful. I work so hard. I make sure we have money. I take care of all of these things so that we can, we can have a good life. And I do all these chores around the house for her, or fix things and do these things. And she's not appreciative. She doesn't care. She says, I don't love her, but obviously I do. And what they're missing is that every time that she's trying to talk or share how she feels, or have some kind of emotional outlet, he's making her feel like it doesn't matter, or that he doesn't care. Or what was that one where the guy, I read you an email or something, he told her to just calm down.
Yeah.
Just calm down.
Yeah. That always works.
Right. So she's being told to calm down.
Yeah.
So that's why that resentment is being built up.
Because nothing's ever being really resolved. And that's how women connect with everyone, really, with other women and with men, is opening up and talking to them. And even though that's not how men connect with women, or even necessarily other men, that is your woman trying to connect with you. She's sharing this vulnerable thing with you, and you're telling her to just calm down, or get over it, or whatever lines that are similar to that a lot of men use, and they would probably use with other men,
right?
But at the same time, it's this is your partner, this is your girlfriend or your wife coming to you to try to talk to you about something that's bothering her. And granted, again, I don't ever think it's acceptable for people to act mean towards the person they're trying to express the things to, or yell at them or anything like that. But men don't really, I guess, see the connection that she's trying to have with you, because he only really views physical connection as a connection in his mind. Again, going back to the first thing, that he doesn't understand that is her moment to connect with you.
Right.
When she's upset and she's coming to you to try to help her feel better, it doesn't mean help her solve her problems necessarily. Right. It means help connect to her so that she'll feel loved, so she can deal with whatever she's got going on, because that is what fuels her. Yeah. And so they just get all sorts of mixed up when dealing with that. And then, like you said, they think they're doing everything right when they're rejecting her in the same way that they would feel rejected when they don't get physical intimacy.
Exactly.
That emotional connection is so important to her that you're essentially doing the same thing to her that she would do if she was like, no, I'm tired. Telling her to calm down is the same as being like, no, not tonight, every single night, every single time they try to come to you. That's the female equivalent.
Yeah, that's brilliant, actually. That's very true.
I know. I just thought of it just now because I was where did this come out of my head? But that's what it is.
It's the equivalent of I have a headache or not tonight or I'm too tired. That's exactly what it is, because it's like, and then after so many times, what happens when a guy tries that so many times and he gives up?
He's defeated.
He's like, I'm not even attracted to her anymore. I don't care. I just right. We saw that in the comments, right? On some of our videos and some other videos that I shared with you that I saw this and I was like, wow, this is crazy. We need to do an episode about this. And but it's the equivalent. What's already happened before that's happened is the woman's already gotten to that point.
Right.
With like every time I try to share with him, every time I try to get emotional connection with him by expressing my emotions and I need to vent, he tries to shut me down. Right. He's like, nah, whatever. Or he tries to fix the problem or whatever. You can't just hear me and empathize with and just hear me out.
And here's the other thing, because guys will be like, well, she doesn't listen to me. But if you do a better job at validating your wife's feelings or your girlfriend's feelings and listening to her and not trying to fix the problem or tell her to calm down or whatever, she will have a better capacity to listen to you. And again, that's because you're leading by example, right? They're all intertwined together. But you can also teach her how to listen and be there for you when you're struggling with something and you want to open up to her by leading by example in those situations. And like you said, most men aren't. And they don't even realize that they're making everything a lot worse. But maybe now that we put the puzzle pieces together for them, they'll realize it's the equivalent of them being rejected with physical intimacy when they're like, just get over it or calm down or just trying to fix the problem and not make her feel like he actually cares about what she has to say.
And making that one shift is huge. I remember I first heard about kind of the idea where it was a light bulb moment for me when I was at a Tony Robbins seminar, and it was at Date with Destiny. So it was like a 6-day seminar or 5-day or whatever. And at the end of it, he talks about masculinity and femininity. And I hadn't heard of these this content before. I was like, what is this? I mean, I heard the words, but then there was a point where he's talking about how a woman needs to vent. Right. And it was like a light bulb moment, because I realized he's like, watch what happens if you let a woman vent and you don't try and shut her down or stuff. It's like she's all of a sudden going to now be very much in a different kind of mood, And I was like, wow, this is true. This is so, how many times as a man have I thought, if a woman's venting, I'm like, was she complaining? Why is she always got to be complaining about things? Or, just why are you just drop it? Like, don't, and it's like, no, a woman needs to vent. It's
You're
not
helping
the same
her You're helping her compartmentalize, like you said earlier. Right. You're helping her get those things that are just still blaring in her mind out of there to clear the space for other things in her mind where she will be able to relax. That's exactly what that does.
And most women have been in relationships where they've never been able to vent. And if you let her, she's going to be so appreciative. A lot of times there's an exception we're going to talk about in the next step, but you're likely to get a very positive response from that.
Right.
So it would be like the equivalent, if we're going around the same thing, as where the guy is constantly rejected for sex. But then one time he's enthusiastically greeted with a response of, yeah. You know what I mean? Like not just a yes, but an enthusiastic, a response. He's going to be pretty happy about that. It's the same equivalent thing. So yeah, so that's the third step then, is applying it to the relationship. So obviously there's a lot of things to apply to the relationship, but the big ones is taking charge, becoming the leader, by example, taking charge of the finances, which includes paying for things now and, taking care of the woman and bringing the communication skills up to allow a woman to vent it, all these things that, a lot of guys don't understand. And that's why they think they're doing everything right, because they're doing everything right that they would if they were married to a man. And
right. They're still looking
right.
through the focus of what they want and
Right.
what they would do, kind of going back to your other steps.
Yeah. So, next step, 4. This is the repair, all right? The digging up the old stuff and cleaning it out. This is when you haven't been to the dentist for a long time, to use the example, and you got
your favorite.
Yeah, this is some tooth extractions, right? It's getting that deep cleaning where they have to give you the antibiotics and, because your gums are infected. This is like doing all that stuff, maybe some root canals in there,
That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot because you haven't been to the dentist in 10 years, you haven't brushed your teeth in 10 years, whatever it is. Things are rotting and falling out. So at the surface level, right, a lot of guys, they don't understand where's the woman I married? They're like, oh, commitment makes women not want to have sex. Commitment makes women turn into a raving bitch, right? No. What's happening underneath the surface is that it's years of neglect, right? In the way that we talked about, right? So in step 3, we talked about how guys are now communicating, allowing a woman to vent, validating her emotions, understanding that. But if you haven't done that for years, it's the same thing as the guy that's so resentful, because I love your example now. I'm going to keep on using it, where he got turned down for sex for 5 years. And now if you talk to him about sex, he's going to fucking blow up. He's going to be like, oh, he's got, he's going to put 50 comments in there and say, yeah, this is crazy. I can't believe it. Like, why would she even marry me? He's got a lot to say about it, right? He's holding in all that stuff.
Right.
And he'll seem like a normal dude until you mention that. And then he will go off, right? So same exact thing. So, and what happens a lot of times with a lot of guys that I've worked with, and I always warn them about it, is when they start acting masculine, and they start listening, the woman seems to get even more pissed.
Well, because she's probably like, why haven't you been doing this sort of thing?
Right. And now that she starts to feel a little bit safe emotionally, which again, probably the biggest thing about being masculine in a relationship is creating emotional safety. That's probably the number one thing, right? Now she starts to take the stuff that she's got buried down and start digging some of that up so that she can get rid of it. And it looks like now she's just spewing on you. She doesn't appreciate anything that you're doing, and she's just making it worse, and like you should never have even gone down this road, because now she's 10 times worse. But it's because all that stuff
Has to come out.
it has to come out. So that's the hard part, as now you got to realize, okay, I didn't mean to damage this woman for such a long time as a man, because you didn't mean to. Guys aren't intentionally like, oh, I'm going to just be an asshole.
They're just oblivious.
Yeah, you just don't understand. In fact, they think they're doing the right thing, right? That's why they get so upset. But you did, whether you meant to or not, it was neglect. You did not do what was necessary. Even if it's not intentional, even unintentional neglect is still neglect. It still hits a certain way. And so she's got all this stuff that has to come out. And so you've got to be patient, right? And even, we went through this a little bit because of our situation when we first got together, and I didn't understand it because I'm like, just forget the past, right?
You literally told me just let it go or something, and I'm like, this is not your decision to let it go. Like, yes, I want to let it go, but telling me to just let it go is not gonna make it go away.
Right, because I didn't want to like deal with it, because I'm like, all right, we need to move on past this thing, right? And I'm like, well, and every time that you had brought it up in the past, I'm trying to explain away what I was feeling and what I was going through and why I did what I did. But you didn't want any of that. All you wanted for me to do was to genuinely care about.
Well, I already knew your side because
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
immediately gone to defending your part, which is what typically men do.
Right.
So I really already understood your part, but I didn't feel like you understood mine because
Right.
every time we had the conversation, it was you defending yourself. And instead of me getting to actually talk to you about it
Right.
until that changed,
Right.
and you listened and you completely listened and you didn't defend yourself and, you did it the right way. But that's also why we're sitting here because it's like we've done a lot of these things and we've gone through a lot of these things. So we know how to fix it so that people can have a better relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know. Like, I didn't. And then when it dawned on me and I was like, oh, all I need
You're
to
like,
do
oh,
is just
this will go
ask
away if I listen instead
well,
of.
and even, but at this point, I don't
defend.
care if it goes away because however many times that you need to bring up a hurt that you went through, and for me to empathize with that, that's fine. Well, like it doesn't, because I understand now that it's just something that you need. It's not anything against me,
Right.
Because you weren't trying to like penalize me or say what a bad guy I was or try to drag me through the mud. You're just trying to get empathy and understanding for what you went through and for me to care about that, to care that you
Right.
had to go through those
It
things.
also makes women feel like a man won't do those things again, right? If
Right.
he fully understands what happened to you, right? So, like, even if they're in a relationship and the woman's like, well, you hurt me when you did this, and a guy's just defending himself, it seems like he might do that again because he's defending his actions, right?
Yes.
But the second that he's like, I'm so sorry, and like, say whatever you need to say about it, I'm going to listen and that won't happen again. And, I'm sorry that I did that to you. That makes her feel like
Right.
he's not going to do this again. Or if it happens,
Right.
then it probably wouldn't be as severe as it was before.
And that's not specific to women. You can flip it and it still is exactly the same. Right? That's just
That's
communication
true.
in general in a relationship
true.
is that either party, when they have a grievance, they never want defense. They never want justification. They
Right.
only want.
No, you're right.
Right.
I just feel like since we're talking about
Yeah.
women, that's like their
No,
thing that
that
they
is-
want to emotionally connect. That's
Yeah.
typically something that men like miss. But you're right that it's
Right.
for anybody.
Right. But it's more likely that men miss it than
Yeah.
women do. Right. So, and it's more likely that it's built up. And it also is the thing that severs that emotional connection that women want. So, yeah. So this is the stage, at stage 4, we're going to get to the good stage of stage 5, but stage 4, you're going through the pit. You have to face all the stuff that you didn't intentionally necessarily do, but
Yeah.
you did. And so you're going to have to dredge up the
Gotta
past.
clean all the skeletons out of the closet.
And just sit there and listen and empathize and don't defend and it's going to be tempting when you revisit the past to talk about why you did the things or it doesn't matter. Just listen, just empathize, just care, just show that you care and bring it up yourself. Say, I'm a different man now. I realize that.
That'll really get her going if you bring it up without her having to bring it up.
I realized when I did this, when I said this, I just had a coaching client of mine I was talking to, and the woman that he was dating, she was like a former model or something, and she had some weight thing, in the modeling industry, and he joked with her a couple of times, and he was like, yeah, of course, I'll love you no matter what, as long as you don't become obese. Right. And like, she didn't really say anything about it, but, her countenance changed. Right. And he's like, oh, what should I do about that? I was like, well, you could bring that up. You could say, hey, I was thinking about this morning. And, the other day when I said that, I just want you to know that I shouldn't have said that. That even if I was joking, even if I don't mean that, I know that probably hurt you. Right. Boom. That's.
Yeah. And she'll have even more respect for you if you bring it up on your own and realize that you made a mistake.
Yeah. So go back through this is where you go back through your whole history and you find the things. And instead of, and again, it takes away the the ammo, right? Because if you bring it up, she can't hit you with it.
It's true.
Right? You know what I mean? If you're tired of being hit with it in a fight or whatever, then you bring it up.
Right.
Then it loses
Because how
its
can
power.
she be like, you did this, when you're like, yeah, I just apologized for that.
Right.
I mean, don't say it like that.
No.
But you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's the idea
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah, so that's the thing, and that's the hardest phase. But that phase comes forth because you're not ready for that until you've gone through the first 3 phases, and that's where you really start to repair the relationship. There, that's where you think that something that is unsalvageable suddenly becomes salvageable. That's where you're most likely to start seeing her change her actions. Up until that point, she's doubting you. She's like, I don't know about this guy. Like, why is he suddenly acting this way? What is he trying to get from me? Is he trying to just get sex? What
Yeah,
is he
you have
like?
to be consistent.
Right. But once you start going into the past and then validating the things that happened, and now you're cleaning it out. Now all that stuff, because the biggest thing, we've talked about this so much on this podcast, that destroys relationships is resentment. That's why the honeymoon phase ends. It doesn't have to end. It ends because,
You're
how do you go
holding
from
on.
how do you go from loving someone to hating them? Resentment. It's so weird. It's like, we were so in love and now we hate each other so much. Yeah, because you built resentment. You got so much plaque on your relationship that it decayed.
Right.
And so this is reversing that. And so you can go back to before that happened.
That's true.
So, all right. The next one,
The
step
last-
5, the last
I know.
step.
I thought you had 6.
Well, there's an option.
That's like an asterisk.
It's like
level.
an asterisk, yeah. So 5 is sex. Okay.
Surprise.
Surprise.
I knew it had
right?
to be in there
It's gonna do it.
somewhere.
Right. Again, the first 5 have to be done first, right?
You
Okay.
better say that one more
Okay.
time for
But
clarification.
then to really solidify and improve the relationship, if you didn't understand what you're doing in the first 5, first 4, I can almost guarantee that you're messing up in the 5th one, right? Because once you understand that women and men are different and how they view things are different, then you can understand how to get better at sex, at pleasing a woman, right? I think this is important. A lot of women complain about this. A lot of relationships it's not the primary thing, it's the other things that we talked about, but now you're ready to start improving in this area. So I think as a man, a lot of men don't really invest very much in understanding how to actually please a woman. Because it's, again, if you think like a man and you think the same,
You're like, oh, it's easy.
right, you're going to think, okay, well, I can just get turned on very quickly or very visually turned on, right? Where it's like, a woman's engine takes longer to rev up, right? And then also you might think, well, as things progress, harder and faster is better. And whereas women are more like, as things progress, constant, don't change anything, right? It's like, so there's a lot of things that a lot of men don't understand about it because they're looking at it from their own lens.
Well, we've talked about this too, that like even with men, when they orgasm, it's a very smaller window than a woman has.
Right.
So, women want things consistent because if you do something right, that gets her pretty far up the scale. She's gonna be like, keep doing that.
Right.
Because you could try something new and it's more down here. You could
Right.
try something else that's kind of in the middle, but that thing still does that. Whereas with guys, it's not as much variance. So, and even if you're doing various things, you can still probably land on the scale somewhere similar.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes sense why it's like that. But again, it's something that you can't just take your experience, man or woman, and then apply it to the thing. You have to, obviously think of your other partner and things that you enjoy too, but it's a 2-person thing. It's not a 1-person thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so many things we could talk about, we won't, but it's like, even just a lot of men don't even understand that when they are trying so hard to give a woman an orgasm, it's actually making it where she's stressed out about it, because women are thinking, I don't want this guy to be disappointed. And so they're thinking more about that than actually relaxing. And so it makes it hard. And then that's when the shoulder tap comes in, is like, okay, all right, slugger, get up here. You're time. You're out. Here. You're out. You've been tagged out. That's the guys that get the shoulder tap. That's why you're getting the shoulder tap, is because you're making it too pressury. You're so there's a lot, right? There's a lot of guys think that they're good at sex and they understand it, but they really don't. You know what I mean? And again, you got to learn this. And if you haven't actually invested the time to learn it, and you're not going to learn it from the graphic videos that you see on the internet, that's not, you have to actually learn this. That will greatly, we talked about this in another episode, not to, make this like the magic bullet you should rely on. But if you can be that guy and you can be really good at this, a lot of other things might not matter so much. Like, you could probably be pretty shitty and you're still gonna.
Don't say that.
I'm not suggesting that you should, but I'm just saying she's probably gonna stay with you because, so.
Oh my gosh! Don't give them that idea.
I'm just,
I know what you're trying to say.
You get what I'm trying to say.
But don't tell them they could be shitty and just.
Look, that's why we went through the other steps first. So.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But this one is important, right?
Yeah, it is, especially because that's how men connect. And, I'm not saying that it's not about men or they can't be focused on what they want to, but what good is being physically intimate if it's just about one person? Because I don't think men would like it very much if a woman just took control and just did whatever she wanted and maybe left him high and dry.
Right.
And I don't think, that a woman would appreciate that either. So it's like, it can't just be about one person. You have to keep everybody into consideration and talk about things and, try different things and be open with each other.
Yeah. And like I said, the two biggest reasons why women aren't interested in sex is, number one is because they lack the emotional connection. And number two is because they're not getting, it's not a fun experience for them.
Right. I saw one comment from a woman and she was saying something. I think it was when the clip that said you're obligated to have sex with your partner. And she was like, well, my man's not getting me like turned on to do the thing, which, it's not to blame the man, but like you said, it takes more for a woman to get in the mood than it does for a man. And, a man should want to get his woman in the mood. That should exactly. Yeah. He should have pride in that.
Yeah.
So, Yeah.
And even just the little things like the touch and how to touch. It's not something that you would just figure out on your own, and unless you actually study and really realize what, because it is a lot different than what.
But what should they study?
I mean, the easiest thing to do is to ask, right? And not have your ego in it, right? To be like, do you like softer or harder, faster or slower, right? Or let me see how you do it, right? These are, it seems like pretty obvious things, but if your ego is in it, then you think you know what you're doing and you're just attacking that thing, and it's not going to produce the result that you think that it's going to produce, right? And the warm-up sequence is a longer warm-up sequence than, I would guarantee you 90% of guys, the warm-up sequence is not.
It's probably non-existent,
but they don't realize what it is, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot to it. Like it's something that you do have to actually devote some time to understanding as a man, because it's not simple.
But you'll be glad you did if you do it.
And also, a lot of women are different too.
That's true.
There's less variation in men, in the actions and motions and whatnot, but there is way more difference in women, way more variety.
That makes sense, because a lot of women never even have an orgasm at all.
Right.
That's sad.
Right. It's true.
But yeah, so it is going to be a lot different. And like you said, the best thing is to ask, because different people like different things.
Yeah. So Those are the, now we get to the asterisk one, which is, the
Okay.
sixth step, which is, I mean, it's kind of, I don't make it a step because it's the maintenance of the whole thing. Because you can't just go through this
And be like,
do
I'm done.
Yeah, it's like, okay,
I
it's
checked
all good
off
now.
the checklist.
No, you're gonna have to continually keep going through this over and over again. Because you're going to forget some things, you're going to mess up some things, resentment's going to build up again. Like you have to keep on clearing it out.
Right.
Yeah.
It's time to wrap this up. Yes, maintenance. Go back if you need to.
Consistently. But no, you got to go back through and you have to work on these things over and over because it's not just a one and done type of deal because it's the ongoing maintenance of the relationship.
But if you've done any sort of like healing or growing or in your own life, you realize that it's a lifelong thing. And it's not a bad thing. You just, it gets easier.
Yeah.
You don't forget it. And sometimes you do forget it and you just got to go back and try again.
And hopefully the ladies in the comments will back us up on this episode so that the men will know that this is what women actually want. So
this is what they actually want, regardless of what anybody says.
I'm just saying, like, it will help to see some of that if you're watching as a woman and you are like, okay, then leave a comment, let guys know that this is true. This is what, will repair a relationship as far as a man can do if he does these things.
True.
So.
All right. So our thing for the week, it was yesterday. And John came to me with some feelings that he was having. And I tried in the beginning. I feel like I did a good job of listening to you and not defending. And then I messed up and our conversation took a turn and I got defensive and I did the wrong thing. But I am sorry that I hurt your feelings and hurt you. And I never want to do that.
Well, I appreciate
And I'm glad you came to me and told me about the things because I do appreciate you being open and talking to me about that.
Yeah. And we worked it out and it was good. And I mean, I think we learned some things too about just, some things related to kind of how we grew up and some of the differences and some things that we didn't definitely, it's weird. Like sometimes you just take for granted that everyone understands things the way that you do. And it's not necessarily the case. So that was good. It was a good, good progress. So
that's how you have to look at any sort of conflict or whatever comes up. Because if you don't, then you didn't really learn anything from the situation and you're not really going to make a change. But, it wasn't like horrible.
No, not by any means. No.
But it just was one of our long, turned long conversations because it pivoted a few different ways. Like I said, the beginning, there were certain things in the beginning that weren't handled the best, but, that is a learning experience. Like you said, with the steps, you just have to go back and, do better next time and realize where you messed up. And even in that moment too, when we first had the conversation, you were upset still visibly. And I was in the shower and I was like, I have to just do the right thing. Like it's a reflection of me. It doesn't matter how upset he is or if it matters how upset you are, but it doesn't matter how he's treating me. I need to go make this right and do the right thing. And then I still ended up messing up further into the conversation. So it's not always perfect, but I think it does help, especially with what you talked about too today on the episode, that I think if men and of course women too look at it like I need to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And kind of let your ego go and just make amends with the person that you care about, that will help you do those things. Yeah. Too. So
I agree. And like I said, I mean, I was upset and I didn't handle it well at the beginning. I'd been doing very good at handling communication very well.
You have.
But I realized too that I don't even realize when I'm raising my voice to it, because I'm excited when I'm upset, and again, it's not like I'm like screaming and yelling.
Right.
It's just my tone is changing and I'm not even aware of it, but I will be more aware of it now because I realize, because when you had said that to me, I was like, what? I'm not yelling. And then when I look back and reflect on it, I'm like, well, yeah, I see how that is yelling.
You were probably like,
it's
well, I wasn't talking like I am now, because it was a
Right.
difference in how you were talking. But
yeah, but it's hard. It's hard sometimes too. Also, when you get upset, to like be calm, and sometimes it is better to, when something upsets you in a relationship, to not even address it right then, to wait a little bit.
as long as you're not resenting.
Yeah. But you got to make sure you clear it out. But you just got to
Right.
wait a little bit to the point where you can now talk about it in a way that doesn't bring as much emotion into it.
Right.
So you can, because sometimes when you're, you get the echo in your head of, of the things that are kind of snowballing in your own head, and and you build it up to more. And then when you're trying to talk about it, it's not a good time to talk about it because you're not.
Yeah, in the right place,
Right.
headspace. Yeah, and I think what I realized too is that we're very similar on a lot of things and we have a very natural connection, but there's still part of our relationship, like certain things where I have to work extra hard because it's not as natural. Like, and I mean that it's not my natural instinct to just know what to
Right.
do that you would like or that you prefer, things like that. And I think that I'm just used to everything being so natural and flowy that I have to focus more on those things that I wasn't putting as much focus in that I really need to. And I still was focusing, but it wasn't to the extent to really drill it in my head.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important for people to know, because it's not like our relationship is hard. And even if I have to focus on something more so because it's harder for me to comprehend right away and just go with, that doesn't make our relationship bad or wrong. Like, it actually makes it so that you're putting all this effort into the person that you care about. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes too, and I'm sure other people can realize that when you do have a good relationship and things are easy-goey, flowy, and good, that sometimes you might not realize that you have to put as much focus into one thing as you really need to, because you're just so used to that.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I was taking it for granted, but I feel like I just wasn't used to putting in that much focus on something, and that I realized that I do need to do that to give you what you need and deserve.
Yeah. I mean, it goes both ways. It's hard to know that sometimes, and that's why it's like it's the same thing where when I was struggling with the communication a lot, and then I had to really put a focus on the communication, and I improved a lot in the communication. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. I still have slip ups, but now it's become more of a thing that I'm much more aware of.
Right.
So yeah, but well, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the birthday.
Yeah, we forgot these. These don't make noise. We're
Yeah,
making the noise. That was definitely, this sounds like one of those yodeling things.
All right.
Well, happy birthday, John.
Well, thank you. And that is it for this week.
Through every fault we